Next question here. This one was from Twitter from Richard340. Warriors likely need to offload payroll. Any chance Pistons take on Poole's contract with Kuminga thrown in as incentive?
So I would not be opposed to taking on Poole's contract at all. I think they need someone that can get buckets, and I think Jordan Poole can do that. Plus, he's a good shooter. So I'm intrigued with that. I'm not sure if the Warriors really would throw in Kuminga just to like get off of Jordan Poole's contract. I like Poole's. It's not a good contract. It's not the absolute worst contract in the world. Like there have been worse. Um, So, I mean, I think you might be looking more at some of their recent later round picks or late first round picks that they have to maybe get off of it. And I mean, at that point, I'd think about it for sure. So, I like on the the crux of the question is if you'd be interested in taking on Jordan Poole's contract. I think that's a yes. I don't think Kuminga would be the guy that's thrown in as incentive, though.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. With the Jordan Poole thing, with this new CBA, and I'm no cap expert. I know we have one in the comments here in Kyle, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what I've heard on podcasts and just reading, is it's going to be really tough to have those three sort of players on around 35 million plus going forward, unless your owner's willing to pay an extreme tax bill. So if you're going to add Jordan Poole, who next season is at 27 million or 28 million, sorry, but then he goes 30 million, 32, 34 million. With the way the Pistons roster is constructed with Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, who you project will be max or close to max guys in a couple of seasons, I don't know if I want to invest that much money in a backcourt. That's like 100 million in a backcourt. Oh, sorry, not 100 million, but say Cade's around 30 and Jaden's around 30. That's a ton of money in a backcourt. So I think
It, it would
I
be.
actually like Jordan Poole as a player, and I think that contract he could go to San Antonio maybe. And there is teams there where that contract works. Detroit's investment in the backcourt sort of, I don't know if I'd want to have that much money tied up in a backcourt.
Yeah, and the thing with Poole too, because I think you're spot on with that. I think you'd be trying to move him before you'd sign Jaden Ivey to an extension, which is 2 seasons away now. And at that point, I believe Kyle can probably correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he's an expiring at that point, so it might be doable. Um, but no, I mean, I think I agree. You don't want to be spending $90 million on your backcourt. I don't care how high the cap's getting. That's just not feasible right now. In terms of what that actually could be if it were to happen, I was just looking at the roster. I think maybe like Jordan Poole and Patrick Baldwin or Jordan Poole and Ryan Rollins. So like very meh young players, you know.
Yeah.
But I might still do it. I just don't think I'm agreed with Kyle. I don't think he's a negative asset at this point. So I don't think Kaminga's coming along the pipe.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Kuminga? Like, forget about the trade stuff, like, just as a player. Like, what sort of player do you see?
Um, I mean, to me, I think he's still very, I guess theoretical would probably be the word. Lot of potential still. He's a crazy athlete. He's really built, and he's flashed a lot of really intriguing stuff. I just don't think he's really gotten the minutes to show anything consistently. So, I mean, in terms of flyers go, like if Kaminga could be on the market and could be had for a reasonable amount in terms of a trade, like I think that'd be a pretty good guy to target just to see what happens. You know, get him in, get him some more time, and go from there. Though the last time the Pistons took a flyer on a young player from the Warriors, I think Twitter might have burned for a few hours. So maybe we should avoid that.
Yeah. No, I think you sort of summed it up pretty well. I'm not sure if he's a 3 or a 4. And it's hard to tell with these young guys in the Warriors system, like,
Mhm.
because part of me goes like James Wiseman, right? For use him as the example, like a lot of Wiseman fans will say, well, the Warriors weren't the right situation. They didn't run pick and roll. He needed reps. He needed reps, and that's all fair. But at some point, it's like the Warriors are a really good team. I know, like, to get, like, they've had injuries and stuff. Like, how much of it is the player just doesn't have that mental capacity? Might be a bit harsh, but just that IQ to like play winning basketball. Like, if LaMelo Ball ended up in the with the Warriors, I don't know. I think he would probably succeed. And like with Kaminga, I guess my point is, like, how much of this is Kaminga just, the Warriors are looking to win and they're not looking to develop as much, or is it just Kaminga just doesn't really have that IQ to sort of fit into a winning team? So that's where I sort of struggle with Kaminga. In saying that, if the price was right, I think he would be definitely a player you take a flyer on, because he's still 2 years away from an extension. So if Detroit somehow did get him this off season, I don't know how, but it'd definitely be a player worth um, seeing how he fits with Detroit.
Yeah. No, and I think to your point, I know like this is obviously a Pistons stream, but I think Kuminga and Wiseman are probably the two biggest red flags in the Warriors' recent draft history because the very core of the problem for them is they ended up drafting these really raw young players who are super talented, great athletes, but they're not ready. And they're a championship level team. So like they're not getting to play. They're not, and obviously, you get better in practice, you get better off off the court as well. But like they're long-term investments. So the fact that Kuminga isn't championship caliber yet by I think he's coming into year 3 now, right? Like that's not a shock. You could have told me that 3 years ago and I wouldn't have been surprised. So yeah, I think that's just kind of a problem with how they've approached drafting recently. You're taking big long shots on these
Yeah.
really raw players and hoping it works out and by the second contract, and they just didn't have time to wait at all for it, which
Yeah.
why did you do it?
Well, and I mean, I think, like, you saw Wiseman came to Detroit, and he just needs reps and he needs time, but I still don't know if ultimately there's much more than a backup
Mhm,
big there, or because defensively, just hopefully this offseason he has a big summer and can come back and show some renewed, like, awareness and just some more mobility. But
mhm,
yeah, that's the thing. But this sort of like takes us into. I sort of wanted to touch base on where our top five, or our big board is at the moment for Pistons at five, because I think this sort of ties in well with what we were just talking about, sort of taking those high potential players, the athletic player types, versus those more sound defensive players that might not have the through the roof ceiling, but you feel like the floor's there for them to be in the rotation of a playoff team no matter what. So I guess, where are
mhm.
you at? What's your big board looking like at the moment, Wes? Maybe your top 3 to 4 prospects at five.
Yeah, no, Jarris Walker and Cam Whitmore are right like, they're neck and neck for me. I'm not gonna be mad, I if either ends up being the pick in a couple weeks. After that, I've got a little bit of a gap, and then Anthony Black. I really like Anthony Black. I'm not 100% convinced he's a perfect fit in Detroit. I think you'd probably and this goes for Amen Thompson too. I think if you draft one of those 2 guys, you'd really like them to be getting some point guard reps at some point. Doesn't have to be starting, but maybe as the bench. And I would love Jaden Ivey to be taking a lot of those minutes. And I think you've also got Killian Hayes on the roster. I just don't know if it's a perfect environment to be bringing in a guard like that. So Anthony Black, Taylor Hendricks would be my fourth choice, and then Amen Thompson. So that would be my top five as of June 8th. What about you?
No, look, mine's similar. I still have Cam Whitmore at five. I just think in terms of the way he can help as a rookie offensively, times I think he has the highest. I think he's got an extremely high ceiling, like, just the
Mhm.
athleticism, the strength, probably a touch undersized to play at the 3, but I think he makes up for that with his strength and just elite sort of explosiveness. Um, and then number 2 is Jarvis Walker. 3, I now have Taylor Hendricks, and that sort of stems from I think I've sort of since looking at prospects over the past month or two, I've sort of now started to lean towards seeing prospects that can help this team defensively. Like I still think we are talking about this offline. This team doesn't have that young defensive player that you know is going to be like has potential to be elite, and like Jalen Duran, I think has a ton of potential, but he has a fair bit to learn defensively, or a fair bit to improve upon defensively. He might get there, but um, Jarvis Walker and Hendricks, I really believe in them defensively. So hence why they've gone to 2 and 3. And then at 4, I have Amen Thompson. And 5, I think I had Anthony Black. So Amen, the reason he's dropped for me is um, the more I've watched just and like the competition level in that OTE, um, it's really hard to assess. So there's a possibility a man comes into the league and lights it up. He's an elite athlete, great handle. Um, he could easily come in and light it up. But I've just really struggled with some of the defensive stuff, and then just the lack of shooting. It's a man falling on my board's more a product of just I don't see him succeeding as much in Detroit as he would say with Orlando, Houston, some of these other teams. Like I think him and Asar could be really, really good players. I just think they might not hit that potential in Detroit because of the way the roster is. And I know, Wes, you haven't been a fan of the Thompsons for. I shouldn't say not a fan. You've prioritized other. You have a different way of viewing things, which um, the Thompsons don't really fit your philosophy.
Yeah, they don't. They're too big of a swing for me, and it's personally, it's exactly for what you just said when you're talking about the level of competition in the OTE. I mean, some of the I guess maybe like antics. There are some things that go on in games that are just like bizarre structurally, not even like the basketball that's being played, just like why did they do that? Like, why did the ref just do that? I don't understand. Like, there are just some really weird things going on with the league that make it really hard to evaluate and be confident in who they can be at the next level. The one thing that everyone knows for sure is that they're incredible athletes, and that solves a lot of problems for players, right? So, like the fact that they have that, huge positive for them. I think they definitely could be really good. I just like sometimes when I watch Amen Thompson, it reminds me a little bit of Michael Carter Williams, and that just scares the crap out of me when I'm looking to pick at number 5. So like with the floor being that low, I would just rather uh, prioritize a few other players that maybe their ceiling isn't, all NBA, but all-star level guys who could be really key cogs in a championship team. I'd take if I'm more confident in that kind of outcome, I'd rather have that player than the just coin flip. He's either going to be incredible or he's going to be awful.